This episode is presented by Knack. Have you ever wanted or needed a bag for multi-purpose use, or a bag that you don't need to worry about your important items such as your phone or laptop? Then Knack Bags are the bag for you. Knack Bags are your everyday bag for work, travel, and leisure. Knack Bags come with a fully padded interior to keep your electronics safe. With its sleek design, organized interior, and professional appearance, it looks great at work or on the street and expands for more capacity when you need it. Get a Knack Bag today and stop worrying about how you look when carrying your life essentials. Use the code GAME and for a limited time, get a free TSA-approved lock with purchase. Just add the TSA lock to your cart with your Knack Bag of choice and use the code GAME, G-A-M-E, at checkout to get it for free.
This is Game On with Johnny Montalbano on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. And now, here's Johnny.
It's showtime, folks. It's Game On, episode number 2 here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network, presented by Knack. I'm Johnny Montalbano, joined today by Nick Morgeson. Nick, welcome. How are you?
Doing good. We have a lot to talk about and a lot of frustration to talk about. We'll get into it.
Absolutely, that's for sure. But as we get started, folks, just your friendly reminder, you can follow us across the social media platform, as you can see on the bottom line there. You can follow us at Game On ETB on Facebook and Twitter. And we are also on Instagram, GameOn_ETB. Also, us personally, Nick at N Morgeson Radio, and I'm at Montalbano NY. Well, Nick, another week, another madness kind of week here in the month of March, and we have once again another bit of stuff to talk about in all facets. We'll get to the football. We've got a quarterback carousel of sorts to discuss. We've got, as we said, it's March, so we've got March Madness, and boy, what an opening weekend in the NCAA tournament, as now we are down to the Sweet 16. A lot of great storylines entering this upcoming weekend's slate of games, and we will get to that. But Nick, I didn't think we were going to lead off with baseball, talking about baseball on the field, but we definitely have a free agent frenzy in baseball, and it really accelerated this past week. The likes of Freddie Freeman, Carlos Correa, Kyle Schwarber, Chris Bryant. I mean, we can go on and on here. But Trevor Story going to Boston, I could just rattle off names here. It's just crazy. Even the Braves getting Kenley Jansen. So a ferocious free agent frenzy in baseball to discuss, and there's a lot of ways to take about it, but Nick and I are both Yankee fans, and I do want to talk about the Yankees in this regard because there's a lot to talk about with them. More specifically, Nick, you look at it, and we were thinking we were figuring the Yankees were going to be in on all of these guys. There's always the reporting that the Yankees are interested, but the fact that they miss out on all of these guys is kind of a surprise. And in my opinion, it's not really a surprise, but there we are. So Nick, when you look at all this, what do you think about the Yankees missing out on all these players?
I'm not surprised by it. I mean, we look at the budget and we look at Hal and we look at what his money to spend is. He was just going to put it in his pocket. He was just not going to do what the fans wanted to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and there's a few things to discuss as well. Everybody wants to talk about how the Yankees should be getting these players. The Yankees should be spending. Well, they are spending, but they're not spending wisely. And that, to me, is really the thing. And I'm actually not as disappointed about the Yanks not getting these guys as the fact that the Donaldson trade has hampered the Yankees. And it's not only just the Donaldson trade, but once again, I'm going to echo something I've said before. Giancarlo Stanton hampers the Yankees in so many ways. And this is yet again another prime example of that with that massive contract that they took on when they made the deal with the Marlins. And even the Garrett Cole contract also hampers the Yanks. But Giancarlo Stanton hampers them not only on the field, but now he hampers them in the ability to go out and get big name players. So I think their biggest thing was, the Donaldson trade, obviously. And now we're starting to realize that I think that trade is even worse than anticipated. And this is even before the games start.
You're talking about $50 million. Now, the Twins were smart here because they said, hey, you know what? Hey, Yankees, take my $50 million with Josh Donaldson and whatever else. We'll give you some young players, but if you take our money, we're good. And then we find out the other day at 2:30 in the morning of all sorts that Carlos Correa signs with the Twins on a 3-year, $105 million deal with 2 opt-outs. And that seems to be a popular thing that's going on in the offseason. Let's give 2 opt-outs. It looks like a 3-year deal, but it's really a 1-year deal. And I didn't understand it because the Twins are really not going anywhere right now. So, very bizarre deal.
Yeah, and now we see with the Yanks now they have Donaldson, who they're paying $50 million for the next couple of years. They've also got their stopgap shortstop, which a lot of people are raving about, and that's all right because you know what? Now you have Falefa, who can be kind of versatile, but they're going to keep him at short, and then they've also got their catcher in Rohrvelt, but now he's hurt, of course, because he's kind of a bulky guy, and now of course he's injured. So now on the field, it's already looking like a trade that's suspect. And we talked about them dealing away Gary Sanchez, which I thought was inevitable, but I think the Yankees they're going to miss him in some ways. And also Gio Urshela, who was a pretty popular player in the clubhouse and also pretty good defensive player. So I felt like the Yankees really did lose a lot, and I don't really know how much they've gained except for the fact that the catcher is up in the air now. Now it looks like he's not going to even be there on opening day. And Falefa is a nice defensive shortstop who can give you something. And then Donaldson, to me, is still questionable because he's up there in age. He's a right-handed bat. They've already got numerous ones of those. And he's 36 years old.
I mean, the one that hurt me the most, like you just said, was Gio Urshela. That guy was energy in that clubhouse. He came to the ballpark every day, did his work, played defense, ran every ball out. I mean, he hurt himself, I think, with a hamstring injury because he would run hard to first base every day. The Gary Sanchez thing, like you said, was inevitable. It was going to happen. The man couldn't catch. He had 15 pass balls every year because he didn't know how to get down and block the baseball like a normal catcher did. But it hurts now because Roulette is hurt,
That's it.
and he's a young guy, and we don't have a catcher. I mean, unless you're going to stick I'm forgetting the guy's name all of a sudden.
Well, right now their catcher is Kyle Higashioka.
If they're gonna stick Higgy behind the plate, which is fine, I think he's a serviceable catcher, but that's not going to get it done.
He's not an everyday catcher. They tried doing that last year with him, and he was exposed.
I mean, he's your typical maybe you have someone that catches 3 days and he catches 2, or however you figure it out.
Well, I think he's more of like the John Flaherty type of catcher for the Yankees. But again, like defensively, I do agree with that. Look, I can't defend Sanchez defensively. I mean, his pass balls, his wild pitches, that's not defensible. But you know what? He still had a cannon for an arm, and he was able to provide you some pop behind the plate. And you know what? Offensively, for the Yankees, who right now are really more one-dimensional team, I mean, that's something that you're going to be lacking behind the plate. I mean, I don't think Higashioka or Rohrvelt are going to be average kind of players, but it definitely look. I mean, it's definitely a transition for the Yankees. I mean, because what they're also telling you right now is that they are telling you that Anthony Volpe is going to be the shortstop in 2023, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on the kid. I mean, he's looked pretty good so far in spring training, but I don't want to take much out of that. But they're putting a lot of pressure on the kid, and it sounds like he's definitely the answer for the future for this team. It's been talked about a while.
The big problem you're going to have, and I talked about this with the guys on Empty the Bench, that you're putting all your eggs in the basket of the prospects. Now, we've learned about this over the years with the Yankees that look what happened to Jesus Montero, who was the big prospect in the Yankees organization. Where is he now?
Well, it's not even in baseball.
Thank you. That's the answer I was looking for. Look, where's Jobber Chamberlain now? Out of baseball.
Well, let me just play devil's advocate with that. Jabba Chamberlain's out of baseball because the Yankees screwed him. I mean, they messed him up.
I agree with you, but at the same time, they way overvalued his value with the team. They could have traded him and gotten any ace pitcher they wanted, but they were so obsessed. I mean, the Jabba rules basically led to every pitcher now in the future being overprotected and not used properly.
Yeah, but when you also see how great he was as a reliever, and then you decide to make him a starting pitcher, and the way they did that too was just downright awful.
I mean, it was like 2 days on, 1 off. It was like it was like the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen before.
Well, what it was also was if I remember correctly, they decided to make this transition in season instead of the off season. So what they ended up doing was when he was a starting pitcher, they actually made him more of like an opener where he would go 2 innings, 1 start, then 3 the next, and they ramp him up. And he ended up having to have Tommy John surgery.
By the way,
it was the worst like transition of reliever to starter I've ever seen in baseball.
The opener is probably the worst thing in all of baseball. I know I'm a more traditionalist MLB fan, but this whole opener nonsense, again, started by who? Joe Madden, who started the shift, then started the opener. I mean, the shift, we both, I think, agree on for the most part. As long as they can figure out the positioning on the field, the shift is okay.
I have no problem with the shift.
Right. I'm saying as long as they can figure it out within reason, I think the shift is okay. The whole opener nonsense is destroying the game of baseball, in my opinion.
That's one of the many things that are, yes. I mean, but, I had to respect that what Tampa was doing because they were winning. It actually was working for them. The thing was other teams tried to copy that, and it wasn't working for them. So for Tampa, it was working, and that's why I understood it. And the shift, you know my opinions on that, and you don't want to get me started again with that, what's going to happen next year. That's why I'm going to try to enjoy this year if we can get back to normalcy with baseball. But
the thing is, just to put a bow kind of on the Yankee side of free agency,
yeah,
I'm glad they brought back Anthony Rizzo. I think that he is a perfect clubhouse chemistry guy. When they brought him in from the Cubs in a trade last year and really turned that clubhouse around. Now, everyone's going to complain, and we'll bring this into the whole MLB free agency discussion, which is if we look at Freddie Freeman and we look at a bunch of other guys that they said the Yankees were involved in, were we really surprised that the Yankees were not going to spend, $165 million on Freddie Freeman? I'm not.
It's not even just about the money, Nick. It's also, and this is what I want to mention too, it's the fit. Freddie Freeman's 32 years old, has never spent 1 day in the American League. So I'm not trying to downplay the kind of career that he's had, but I just really wonder if it would have really worked out. It's the same thing with Trevor Story. Trevor Story, his career has been in a very friendly hitters ballpark out there in Colorado. He goes to Boston for 6 and 140. He's not even going to play shortstop. He's going to play second base for them. So and he's another right-handed power bat. It's not what the Yankees need right now. So I actually did not have a problem with them not signing Story. Freeman, you know what? They got Anthony Rizzo, who can be Freddie Freeman-like in a better contract. So the Rizzo signing actually, I think, in my opinion, is a better fit than Freddie Freeman. I think what they're doing with Falefa as the stopgap shortstop is a better fit than a Carlos Correa. And I know Carlos Correa can, he can mash, but he can hit. He also can't stay healthy. He's had injury problems too. So I wasn't ready to give him that kind of money. There really wasn't anybody out there. Chris Bryant's not a fit for the Yankees. I mean, would I like Chris Bryant over Josh Donaldson? Maybe, but not for the 7 years and $182 million that he got out there in Colorado. So the fits and the contracts to me for the Yankees just don't, pun intended, they don't fit.
Right. And by the way, full no trade clause in the whole Chris Bryant contract, which basically, and I've said this to the guys, I'll say it to you, I call the full no trade clause the idiot clause, because literally you're basically attached by the hip. I was going to say something else, but you know what I mean. Attached to the hip to a team, and you can't be moved. I feel like the no trade clause should be destroyed in baseball. I don't think it helps with anything whatsoever. But the Freddie Freeman contract with the Dodgers, which, by the way, the Dodgers did something for the first time in a long time that I thought they would never do. Deferred money for an organization that's up there with the Yankees that spends money. They now took the lead in the most money spent. They're over $300 million now. They're basically in Steve Cohen tax territory when it comes to this whole situation. Now, some of the other names you brought up, Correa as well. I think you're right. I think the Twins are in for a headache with that type of contract because I think if Correa gets hurt, he's just going to stay there and pick up the options every year.
Sure, and it was only a 3-year deal, but again, I don't want to be giving that kind of money to a player that really, I know he played a full year last year, but he's had injury problems before, so I don't want to do that. The other guys that really signed this week, Kyle Schwarber, not a fit on the Yankees. Maybe if they didn't have Stanton, perhaps, but he doesn't fit. Nick Castellanos going to the Phillies as well. Again, that's not a fit. And these other guys, like we've said, even Soler's not a fit. That just goes back to what I have a problem with the Yanks right now, and that I have a bigger problem with the Josh Donaldson trade than I do with them not signing a big name guy because it just doesn't fit.
I want to blame one thing though, because the Yankees get, for some reason, and I said this to the guys, I've said this to a lot of people, the insiders in baseball. Now, you and I have complained about the MLB insiders before when they write certain things.
Yeah.
John Heyman, I'm looking at you, by the way, constantly saying that the Yankees are involved in every player that's on the free agency market. I think you know where I'm going with this.
Sure.
That I get frustrated when they say, well, the Yankees are looking at A, B, C, D, E, all the way to Z. They're not. They're making that up. The Yankees aren't looking at everybody.
I mean, I'm sure that, they would – I'm sure they are kind of like, looking at the player, but they're also trying to think, does it really work? Like I said, none of these guys. This also goes just to the sign of the times for the Yanks now. I think they are going down the prospect route more. Like Jabba and like you said, Jesus Montero. Those back in the George days. So we're looking at a different thing now, and I kind of like it. I like the fact that they're going with a more homegrown approach. That does lead though to now what's going to happen going in. I mean, I don't want to look at the next offseason, but next offseason is going to be kind of interesting because now you're going to talk about Volpe. You're going to talk about Aaron Judge and what his future is going to be because he's going to be 30 next season. And you wonder if the money they gave to Donaldson, if the Yankees really have a money situation here, Nick.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, if they do have a money situation and they decided to give $20 million plus per year for the next couple of years to a Donaldson at age 36, it was that money that really they could have used towards Aaron Judge and his free agency because if Chris Bryant can get 7 and 182, what is Judge going to want or think he's going to get?
How old is Chris Bryant, though?
I believe Chris Bryant is 30 as well.
All right. I mean,
he might even be on the north side of 30. Let me just go double check that as we're talking here.
But I think the difference between Chris Bryant and an Aaron Judge, Chris Bryant is a multi-dimensional player that can play multiple positions where the guy has a ton of capability. Now, I think Colorado is dumb giving a guy like him 7 years, $182 million when there's no one else in the organization. There's no one else protecting him in that lineup. I mean, you traded away. This still makes no sense. You traded away Nolan Arenado, who is the better third baseman, more power, can hit for average when necessary. Chris Bryant is going to strike out 200 times.
Bryant is 30.
All right. I mean, I think Aaron Judge is a better overall hitter. Now, Aaron Judge has struck out a ton over the last 2 seasons because he's pulling off on the ball more than I'm used to seeing him do. But 7-year contract at 30 years old in today's baseball is not good.
And can they do that if they've already are tying so much money into, like we said, Donaldson and then also Cole and Stanton?
I would rather have seen, and I know you might not, might not be a popular opinion. If they were going to go spend the money, I wish they would have gone out and at least gotten Bryant if they were going to go spend the money at the third base position.
You know what I would have done is if they wanted to do that, then I would have also, like I said to you last week on the show and I've said on other shows before, I would have looked into trading either Gallo, Stanton, or Judge in the offseason because those 3 players on the team together are just, they're going to be powerful, but they're also not going to give you a big average team and a big on base, on base wise, not really either.
Or stay on the field.
Well, that's another thing too. I mean, that's why you look at this team, and I don't really think they're constructed all that well. Heck, if they wanted to, and again, because we obviously know their prides into these prospects because they would not have traded for Olsen, and they didn't trade for Chapman, who I think is a better fit at third base for for Toronto now than I believe Donaldson is for the Yanks. So, and we know now that, if they're telling you that Volpe is going to be here next year, Dominguez down the road, because they would have traded those guys and maybe one or two of their starters to go get a Chapman or a, you know what I'm saying? Or an Olsen.
Well, you're also talking about the pitchers as well. They could have a Mahida or a Montes or just other guys.
I do think they have to go get another pitcher like a Montes or a Manaea who have been talked about with Oakland as well.
I mean, it makes no sense what the Yankee organization is doing attached to the other free agency that we're talking about. I would have loved if they got Olsen in a trade and then signed him to that contract that the Braves gave him 8 years, like $155 million, something like that. That was a steal on the free agent market once they got him off trade. So I don't know. It's a weird situation. The Judge contract is a good up for debate discussion, whether I think they could give him 4 or 5 years, and maybe what I would do, maybe give him 5 years and 2 option years or something. I wouldn't give him 7 years because we've seen outfielders go down. Now, on top of that as well, you have the whole situation where he was a bonehead in the press conference, if you know what I'm talking about, Johnny.
Absolutely. And this kind of broke just as we got off the air last week on our debut show, Nick, the comments from Aaron Judge when we found out that the vaccine mandate is going to stay in effect indefinitely in New York, which is going to impact the Yankees and the Mets in terms of home games, because if there are players that are not vaccinated, and we know we've heard who the reports about who is and who isn't, but the story of, the players that are not vaccinated can't play home games. And Aaron Judge's comments last week, I mean, let's be honest, we don't need to really
we don't have to play them. Yeah.
No, because we can tell that he's one of the guys that's not vaccinated, because why would you answer the way you did when you were asked last week about that?
He mamboed so far away from that question. I think he was doing limbo while at the press conference. I mean, it was so bizarre. And I said this to the guys, and I'll say it to you. Why the heck would you do this in front of the New York media, of all places? Would you mambo the vaccine question?
Yeah, I mean, the New York media, like you said, and it's just, I don't want to go down a different road here, but it's amazing how this has become like the most difficult question to answer in sports and society. I mean, and look, Judge is only going to hurt himself by this, because not only is it the team, but then his free agency value, if he doesn't play those kind of games. And remember, even now in Canada, if you're not vaccinated, you can't play in the games against Toronto.
You can't travel.
You can't travel there, yeah.
And by the way, and I'm sure this will be a huge topic of discussion once the season starts on April 7th. When guys are not on the roster, when they go to Toronto, we're going to know who's not vaccinated.
Nick, if we get to opening day on April 7th, think about this. Red Sox, Yankees at Yankee Stadium. Aaron Judge is not in the starting lineup. I mean,
and
that's all you need to know.
And I told the guys as well, if they try to pass that off as, oh, well, we usually have a built-in day off on the first series, don't give me that if he's not there.
Not on opening day.
I'm just saying they might try to do that if he's not on the opening day line.
Who would buy that, though, on opening day? It's one thing if that's June, but it's the first game of the season.
I agree with you. I'm just saying they might try to pull that excuse.
I mean, can you imagine, we hear the stories in basketball about the rest days and the maintenance days and all that stuff, and you tell me that he's having a rest day on opening day? I mean, that'd be so laughable. Come on.
No, I'm. First of all, I think it would be the biggest clown show in all the sport if that's what they came out and said. But they'll do anything to protect the reputation of Aaron Judge, even though I'm telling you right now, if he's not vaccinated by opening day and he's not playing home games and he pulls a Kyrie Irving or he pulls a LeBron James where basically he won't talk about it, he's going to affect his free agency status.
And what about the comments that he made after the Red Sox signed Trevor Story?
Well, he was not the only one who made that comment. LeMahieu made that comment as well.
Yeah, but you know what? LeMahieu's here for many more years. Judge like we said, I tell you, all the signs right now are pointing to the fact that this is going to be his last year in the Bronx.
I mean, the money hurts.
And you know what? Some of it's his fault. Some of it's not his fault. Some of it, the faults could also lie at the fact that, like we said, the contracts and, the positioning of Giancarlo Stanton and Cole. That's what Yankee fans have to realize. As good as Giancarlo Stanton was this past year and how him and Judge carried the team pretty much the whole year last year, he hurts the Yanks in so many ways now. It's not even just the contract, but also on the field, that one of those big three, Judge, Gallo, or Stanton, has to go.
Yeah, I mean, the Stanton contract, I mean, we were all happy as Yankee fans at the time because we thought we were getting an all-star outfielder.
No, I wasn't happy the first day they made that trade.
I'd be careful with that statement because you don't know that it's a fallacy of a predetermined outcome, as I would say that you don't know if he was going to be good, bad, or indifferent until he was there.
No,
but,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I can tell you right now that him and Judge were the exact same player. I agree with. And they don't need two of those players on the same team.
I agree with you that they're both power hitting, strikeout guys. Now, I think Aaron Judge has the more of the capability of hitting for average when he tries to.
Yeah.
But we all know Stanton was there for the power hitting bombers. We knew this, but I think it's tough to say that from day one we knew what we were expecting out of Stanton. That's hard.
I mean, I saw him down in Miami where he was mashing those home runs, and I also saw him that a lot of the time he couldn't stay on the field.
Well, that I agree, because Stanton was constantly getting hurt, and also he got hit. What was that? He got hit in the face twice, didn't he?
Yeah. I remember one of them in Milwaukee. Yeah.
So
fires.
Those contracts are tough, regardless. When, first of all, Miami was stupid in the first place, giving him that contract, considering they don't have the money. So they knew they were going to end up trading him at one way or the other. And then, of course, the irony of Jeter being the GM at the time and trading him to the Yankees. And where's Jeter now? Out.
Yeah.
So,
well, because they wouldn't go after Castellanos. Instead, they settled on Soler.
I like Soler. Don't get me wrong. But it's not a Castellanos. It's not a Stanton. It's not, I don't know.
No,
bizarre.
Well, I mean, it's, the whole thing, like we talked about, all these big names now that have come off, and a couple of things real quick also that the Yanks, before we move on to the other free agents that I'll run down real quick, they traded Luke Voit, which was not really a surprise because he had no spot on this team. I mean, his comments, you could tell he did not want to be here, especially after Rizzo got here last year. It was unfortunate last year that, he got hurt so much, but that would have been something also if, he had so much value before last season, and they, like you said, like they've done with prospects before, they traded him at his lowest value. I would even said the same thing about Sanchez. They traded him at his lowest value too.
I think they traded both for like 30 or 40 cents on the dollar pretty much when they traded them. I mean, Luke Voit came in, did what he was supposed to, bring energy. See, this is what I don't get. The Yankees are getting rid of the energy guys, the Luke Voits, the Gio Urshela's, excuse me, the Clint Frazier's who were on this team. Now, the whole Clint Frazier situation was a joke as well. They could have traded him. You see a common theme here with the Yankees that they could have traded guys at higher values to get pieces they actually needed.
Yeah, but I also see that they were trying to go in a different direction as well, and I think that's what they're going to be doing going forward with Volpe and Dominguez when he's ready.
You hope. The key word is hope that they stay on track and they come up and because they keep saying Volpe, they want Volpe to be the next Derek Jeter. I mean, which is a tough pressure.
Well, I that's the only thing that would concern me right now is they're putting, all the talk about him, they're putting a lot of pressure on him too. But if they really didn't think that, I think, let's put it this way. Georgia's Yankees would have traded them already and would have gotten an Olsen or a Chapman.
Both.
Yeah, maybe both. Yeah.
Back in the day, if a position was not filled with an all-star with George, he would have here's what would have happened. He would have traded for Chapman. He would have gone out and gotten Freeman, and he would have gone out and gotten Correa. He would have spent the boat.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying that's right by any means, but he would have wanted an all-star at every position.
Yeah, and, I will close out with this regarding the Yanks. I think this is still a team that can be playoff bound, but then we have to find out what they are once they get into the postseason. because like these teams, these deals might be all right for the regular season, but I just don't think they're postseason worthy. Even though we've seen in the postseason that it does come down to the home run ball, I find it better to be more of a rally kind of situation where you rather have men on base and then hit the home run, and that's something they don't have because really, right now, the only guy that really hits for an average that's on that team is LeMahieu. And the way things are looking right now, LeMahieu's not even in the starting lineup next on opening day.
Which is ridiculous considering they signed him to a large contract.
I totally agree. And I think last year his production was hampered by the hip injury, which we found out was actually more severe than it was. But, I mean, right now, if they're all healthy and they're all playing on the field together, LeMahieu's the odd man out. And I don't think that should be the case.
The guy is a batting champion. I mean, like, for crying out loud. They're going to find a spot for him. They can't do that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, but that also goes to the fact that this team also is kind of up there in age at third base, at right field.
You might see LeMahieu become that guy that they said he was originally going to become, which is play multiple positions. He'll play every day, but he's going to play at a different position every day. You'll see him at second. You'll see him at short. You'll see him at third. You might see him at first.
Yeah, that's certainly possible, and you always want a player like that. They did sign Marwin Gonzalez to a minor league deal, and maybe he could be that guy if he does make the roster, who's a switch hitting guy as well. He could be like that. But, yeah, no, that broke within 15 minutes of each other. The Red Sox get Trevor Story, and the Yankees sign Marwin Gonzalez. I mean, but Marwin might be a better fit than Trevor Story on the Yankees. That's why I'm trying to – the whole thing about this about the start of the show here is I want to preface it by saying this. I don't have a problem with the Yanks not going out and getting these big free agent signings. I have a bigger problem. They traded for Donaldson, and that hampers them in so many other ways.
Right. And the whole thing on Trevor's story is way overhyped in a lot of ways. Everyone says, oh, well, he's going to be the next big guy. He's going to be a Derek Jeter. I think he's a Derek Jeter fan. I think he wanted to be a Yankee at one point.
That's why he took the number. I think that's what, yeah. Well, he was number 2 over there, but yes.
So people need to give it a rest. Troy Tilowitsky was another one. That's why he ended up in a Yankee uniform. That's why he wanted to be there. So,
at the very end of his career, too. How appropriate that was. But
it's bizarre.
Yeah, and I think I saw a stat. His career average away from Coors Field is 241.
That's the problem. And that's why Chris Bryant is going to destroy his swing, even if he gets to a certain point where the Rockies are going to suck again, and then he's going to want out. He's going to complain, and he's going to want to be traded. And people are going to be like, well, you were in Colorado for 3-4 years. How are we supposed to take your numbers seriously playing in Colorado?
Yeah. So, opening day now, a little over 2 weeks away, and we'll see. There's not many more guys that could sign. I mean, they pretty much all signed, Freeman, Correa, a Story,
Kenley
Jansen. I love what the Phillies did. My gosh, the Phillies with Schwarber and Castellanos. I mean, in that ballpark, surrounded by Real Muto and Harper. I mean, their pitching staff definitely concerned. Their defensive concern, but that offense in that ballpark and stuff is going to mash.
The NL East, and we don't talk about it enough. We'll talk about it in your MLB preview, which we're going to do for this show. That the NL East is going to be a monster this year. We didn't think that was going to be the case. Who thought the NL East of all teams was going to be a threat? And Kenley Jansen going to the Braves, that bullpen was unreal already. Now you're adding a guy that's going to be a consistent closer for you every day.
That's a good bullpen they've got there too. Also with McHugh that they brought in as well. That's a good bullpen. And the Mets losing Familia, that takes a hit to their pen. I'll tell you. I mean, this is going to be interesting. I mean, I showed you the over/under numbers. One of the books had, and they had the Met over/under at 90, and I was like, wow. I mean, that's you're banking on a lot there to be 90, but we'll definitely spend a lot more time on them as we get closer to opening day, which is, believe it or not, 2 weeks away from Thursday.
And somehow we're magically going to have 162 games somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still trying to get excited for it. I'll tell you, these spring games, I've caught a couple of highlights. I tell you, it just doesn't do it for me yet. Because
me neither.
The taste of the lockout, and I know we should be over this, but the taste of the lockout is going to be felt for a long, long time.
I think at least through this whole season.
And next season when these other new rule changes go into effect.
Well, you already have one in place already with the universal DH. I mean, so it doesn't matter.
Which is okay because that was inevitable.
Well, no one wants to see the pitcher hit anymore. It was a joke.
Well, they could still do that. They put him at the DH. They pinch hit when somebody pinch runs it for the DH, and then you need somebody to hit.
But I'm saying in technicality now, the pitcher doesn't hit.
Yeah, and I will miss that because I did like the strategy involved in all that.
You're like Anthony, who's another.
And also, also let's think about when opening day comes around, and like I've mentioned before, these starting pitchers can only go 5 innings on opening day because they're not stretched out all the way.
I mean, that was inevitable. I mean, usually for the first couple of weeks anyway, you only saw pitchers going 5 innings. Maybe if you were lucky and you were on a pitch count, maybe you pitched a 6 or 7 inning game. But this is inevitable just because the lockout was 99 days.
Yeah.
And that's what I say. And I say it as a joke. 99 days and a man clown isn't one. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, we were talking about the free agent frenzy in baseball, Nick, and another free agent frenzy that we've had to discuss is football and the quarterback roulette that is just continuing to happen. We spoke about all the big names last week, and then on our first show, and then this past week, a couple of more big ones happened, and obviously none bigger story than DeShaun Watson going to the Browns, which really just came out of nowhere. We knew he was going to get dealt, but it looked like it was close to becoming the Falcons. And he goes to the Browns, and not only does he go to the Browns, but they proved me wrong because they ended up trading 3 first-round picks as well as multiple others, which I couldn't believe. And then the cherry on top of the most unbelievable deal is the fact that they give him $230 million over 5 years, fully guaranteed.
Yeah, my blood boiled.
There's so many angles to talk about with this because we still don't even know if he's going to be facing a suspension with the 22 suits that he's still got to get over. But Nick, you start this. What do you think about this stuff?
So I had a chance to react when this news broke, when it came out. And to be quite honest, 5 years, $230 million, fully guaranteed to a guy that hasn't been on the field in over a year, to a bad guy, a bad individual. Now people are going to get mad at me because our show and my account, we were personally blocked by DeShaun Watson, even though most people who know this in the media business, I'm sure you know this too, public figures are not supposed to block people. Public figures are public figures. They have to take the BS when it comes down on them.
I always say it to athletes, be above it all.
Right. And you know what? The Browns were desperate. We know this for a fact, that the Browns were desperate. And we'll get into the whole Baker Mayfield nonsense and how he basically is torpedoing his career at this point. Yeah. But DeShaun Watson, when he's healthy and he's not a moron, he can actually be a good quarterback. But I will never get behind a guy who allegedly was either abusing women or I don't know. I'm trying to be careful with my words because we don't know the whole situation. Now, he got off the criminal charges because he's an NFL athlete or any athlete. And if you know anything about most athletes, they don't get charged with anything.
Yeah, they find a way to get out of it, that's for sure.
But 22 civil lawsuits, like you said, that's a lot. It's hard to get out of civil lawsuits. My guess is that he's going to get an 8-game suspension. He's going to get a half-season suspension once this is all figured out. So you're going to lose him for probably half a season this coming year.
Yeah, and where do you go from there? Then you go to Jacoby Brissett, who they brought in for a 1-year deal. They traded Case Keenum to Buffalo for a 7th-round pick. And like you said, Baker Mayfield, the way things are looking right now, and I said this to you before the show, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about Baker Mayfield in the USFL before we see him back on an NFL field.
I want to make a weird comparison to you here and see if you follow my logic. So Baker Mayfield and Johnny Manziel I'm having flashbacks on.
Maybe. Baker's better than Manziel if that's
agreed
on the NFL front, but
I'm having flashbacks. I'm having flashbacks to like their attitudes on the field.
It certainly is a fair comparison, yes.
Because if you remember, everyone was high on Johnny Manziel. He's going to be the next big time quarterback. He's going to come out. He's going to do commercials like Baker does and makes all his money. And all of a sudden, Johnny flamed out. And it seems like Baker might be heading in that direction too. He could flame out.
Yeah, I think somebody's still going to take a try on him. I know he's had some success, and I really do wonder if that injury last year had something to do with it. But
The torn labrum. Yeah.
yeah, and the thing is, I think somebody would take a shot at him. But the problem is, if he keeps opening his mouth and stuff, then I don't think anybody's going to take a try at him. Because I do think that there's actually a situation where it would work with Mayfield. Because there are still a couple of teams that are looking at QB options. And I even have said that I thought Seattle, as much as it looks like they might be going through a rebuild, could be going through a restructure. I could see him being possibly going to – I could see Seattle as a team that could take a flyer on him. I mean, they've got the capital to go get him. They still have some players like Metcalf over there. So, and, Pete Carroll's still there. That's why I'm really not sure if it is yet a full rebuild over there in Seattle, because if it was, then why is Pete Carroll still the head coach over there in Seattle? That's the thing.
Because the organization doesn't know what it's doing right now. That's why he's still the head coach.
That may be, but I said I think Seattle, I would take a try if I'm Seattle at him.
Well, I think it hurt Baker's market when the Colts said, hey, we could go get Matt Ryan, and we only have to give up a third-round pick for it. So first of all, that trade made no sense to me either. Why all of a sudden Matt Ryan, good, see ya, bye, don't need you anymore.
Both, yeah. Well, and Falcons, I mean, geez, see that, the biggest cap hit in league history?
40.5 million, I think, was the dead cap space.
Something around, it's over 40. It's around that number, yeah.
All this dead cap money, and I'm glad you brought this up because this has to do with also the contracts. Look at the amount of guaranteed money that some of these quarterbacks are getting. The Matt Stafford deal, which broke on Saturday. I think it was 4 years, 160 million with 135 million guaranteed. Exactly. We're talking about insane guaranteed money. What happens if these guys go down and they get hurt? You're on the hook for that guaranteed money.
Absolutely. And also it's, what it's also creating, Nick, is it's creating a benchmark for these other quarterbacks who are eventually going to we're going to want their money. We're talking about the likes of Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. Those are guys that are going to want their money. Well, so Mahomes and Rodgers might have started it, but now it's exploded even from there.
With DeShaun getting 230, what the heck are Herbert and Burrow going to want? Burrow just came off a Super Bowl run. I mean, Herbert, on the other hand, I think he's close. And I said during this past season that he was a top 3 MVP candidate. So
sure,
if DeShaun got 230, you're going to have to give them more.
Yeah, I mean, it looks Cincy, I think, still is building a team that could be good for a very long time. And him and Burrow now. I love what they've done this offseason. They're showing them that offensive line, which we've said before. I even said it when I was on your Empty the Bench show, that if they shore up that line, they have the makings of a team that can compete for years.
The Chargers look dangerous. I mean, just because you have the guys like Bosa and then you brought in Mac, would you want to be a QB running from those two guys?
No, that AFC West is going to be so amazing. It's obvious, but there's so many storylines. And just think, somebody in that division is going to have a disappointing year. I don't think it's realistic to think that those 4 teams can all be that good.
Right, and I don't know. The money is the money. I've never seen this much money go down in the NFL before. Like, we've seen contracts. The Mahomes contract was really the only thing that was really bizarre, but it made sense because the guy won a Super Bowl. He went back to another one. He's going to be a star for the league to come. I think he's the next Tom Brady in that situation. But the amount of money is crazy.
Yeah, and they're doing this for teams that we don't really know how long the window is. I mean, I know I brought up the Bengals that they could be good for a long time, but we don't know how long a window truly is in the NFL. The perfect example, look at the Chiefs themselves. They've been to 4 AFC championship games. They have 1 Super Bowl.
Right. And actually, I'll throw one more name at you because this just happened. It just officially was confirmed. Jameis Winston.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about a guy, I think they got 2 years, 28 million, I think.
28 million, 21 guaranteed.
That's actually not awful if you think about it. Like, I mean, he got hurt last year. If he didn't get hurt last year, I think he was going to have a really good season with the Saints.
It's shaping up to be that way. Yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, the Saints were on the hook for dead money from Drew Brees still.
Yep, for sure. And you look at some of the other moves that happened last week on St. Patrick's Day. How about 7:00 at night? You're getting ready to watch basketball and stuff, and you see the news of Devontae Adams going to the Raiders, and then the contract that they gave him which we heard the reports of how he did not want to play on the franchise tag, but then he goes to the Raiders, and all of a sudden that makes them in it. We talked about the Bills getting Keenan, but how about Von Miller as well?
That was ridiculous. That was
$120 million for 6 years, 53 guaranteed.
When Von Miller was people were saying Von Miller's career was dead and over. Remember he went AWOL from, what was it, when he was with the Broncos before he got traded? Like, they couldn't find him. He was like DOA almost.
Do you think that was I think it was kind of a reaction to what happened in the playoffs, though, because how their defense was great all year and then failed them in the most important times of the year? Because, the Bills were the better team against the Chiefs in that playoff game.
Yes, exactly. And the only reason the Chiefs won is because of the Chiefs had timeouts. And Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. I mean, the guy is a stud.
Yeah.
But the amount of money that's going around is, like I said, is insane.
Yeah, and then Robert Woods goes to the Titans, another out of the blue move. That's a situation where if I was Green Bay, I would have tried to replace Adams with Woods, just as another receiver for Rodgers, because maybe Rodgers is hampering that team too, and they can't keep their big name guys.
Actually, you just reminded me of something as well. Julio Franco being released. I mean, Julio Jones. Oh my God, Julio Jones. I'm thinking too many sports. Julio Jones, yes, was released by the Titans, and that's why they made the trade for Robert Woods, I think.
Yes, that is certainly it. Look at what the Falcons now have got. I mean, they've gone from Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley and Russell Gage to now Marcus Mariota, and I don't even know who else they could fill out on that roster.
Do we think Ridley's going to be back? That's a question mark right now, because he's suspended for the whole season.
For all of next year, he is, yes.
Even though I think that's not enough, in my opinion, but that's a whole different issue for a whole different day.
Nick, you look at all these moves, and this is why I think when you look at it, I think the team that's won this offseason so far has been the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When you look at all – well, and I know I'm going to tell you why, because they're going to run over the NFC, because after them, you've got who? You've got the Packers, perhaps the Cowboys, and then who else do you have in that conference? I mean, maybe the Vikings, maybe the Eagles, but they're playing in the most favorable division in football right now.
I agree. The one thing I just wanted to bring up, though, when you were talking about the Packers, I think there's bad juju going on in that locker room, because how do you trade Devontae Adams away, considering he's Aaron Rodgers' top target? You give all the money to a 38-year-old aging quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, and you trade away a guy who's probably in the top 3 in all of the NFL and wide receivers, and the Raiders of all teams give him $140 million. Am I missing something here?
No, you were totally right, and that's why I said Rodgers might have a couple more years left in him, but that franchise is going to be hampered by that contract now.
Right, and Aaron Rodgers is not. I'm just going to say it now. Aaron Rodgers is not worth the money that they gave him at all.
Yeah. I think they were worried about losing him, but I'm like, is that much, really? And then you see what Tom Brady does, how he doesn't take that big of a hit. And in fact, they were even reporting that he's trying to work out a deal to even take less money so they can fit other pieces around. And then they bring back Leonard Fournette today. So, I mean, they're shaping up that roster to have another run at it.
I think that, again, I would classify that as a Tom Brady motivated move.
Yeah, but I mean, Brady could play at half the rate that he's playing at, and they're going to go at least 5-1 in that division. I mean, I'm being generous to lose one game or maybe two, but I mean, outside of that, I know they play the AFC West next season. So yes, that's challenging. Yes, you have the Rams, and that's another team too. The Rams will still be in it, but after that, there's really that whole conference is like, who else do you have? You've got 3 teams right now in the NFC South. I mean, I know that the Saints shored up Winston, but I don't know if that's really over the top move. And now they don't have Sean Payton there coaching. So that's something. The Panthers are a mess. The Falcons are a mess. So they've got that. That's why to me the I know the AFC West is loaded, but the Bucs have won this offseason so far because Brady's going to come back and he doesn't even need to be the dominant Tom Brady, and they'll still by accident win 11 and 12 games.
Well, I think the sick part is even without Brady, I think they still were probably considered a top team because I think they re-signed Godwin. They re-signed a bunch of guys. Their receiver core was good even without Tom Brady. Now, I know that's saying a lot. People can say, what do you mean he's good? They're good with... Oh, yes, they are. They're good with it. When they had Jameis Winston, of all people, they were still okay. Jameis Winston is no slouch. People think that he's just a nobody. So, obviously, like you said, they're accidentally now going to stumble into double-digit victories with Tom Brady back in the fold. But we still got to play the game and see what happens. Now, like you said, the Panthers are a mess. Like, in a large way, a mess. They don't know who their quarterback is right now. The Saints, I like the Saints, but they don't have the proper coaching. So we'll have to wait and see.
I just wonder now as we continue, as we talk about the roulette now, the next guy that's got to be up there now has got to be Garoppolo. You know what? He's probably the next one, or maybe Mayfield, like we talked about earlier. But then, those are probably the next ones that are going to be on this roulette.
I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Garoppolo. I think Garoppolo is way overvalued. And he just had a shoulder surgery, I think?
Yes.
So it's like the wrist injury, like we said in baseball. You don't know. Was it his throwing shoulder?
I think it was his throwing shoulder, yes.
So you're even at more risk. So now you got to wait for him to come back.
Yeah, but I mean, the reports were that he was going to be fine by the summer, but you want to see him throw too, so...
We all know how injuries work. The projections are always off.
And for those that are saying about, how can you say Brady when you look at the AFC? Well, I'm going to give you these starting quarterbacks in the AFC West, and here's the deal. Some of these big name guys are not going to make the playoffs next year. Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Derek Carr, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Patrick Mahomes, Davis Mills. All right, man, maybe not. Matt Ryan, Tua Tagovailoa, who we don't even know maybe he's even going to be the quarterback. I mean, they brought in Teddy Bridgewater. Now, Bridgewater didn't want to comment if he was going to be the guy, but
he's the backup.
Yeah, Tannehill, who I know had a bad playoff run, but still, if he's in a good system over there. Trubisky, DeShaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Zach Wilson. I mean, I just listed you. What? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, I two-thirds of that group at least could be Pro Bowl caliber quarterback.
Well, I would keep Zach Wilson out of that discussion.
He wasn't one of them. He wasn't on my list. Him, Mills.
Well, you said his name, but yeah.
I just brought up the list of the AFC quarterbacks.
Oh, okay.
Quarterbacks, and just my point is, some of those guys are going to get shut out of the postseason, so they're going to cancel each other out. And you look at the NFC. I mean, barring something crazy, some team is going to surprise us next year and take the next step. But who's that going to be? Minnesota, Philly. I mean, I'm a Giants fan, Nick. The Giants might stumble into 6 or 7 wins next year just because of that. Just because they're going to have a quote unquote more favorable schedule, and the fact that those NFC teams aren't that great.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I think New York football is going to suffer for another year. I think teams can make it.
At least. I mean, because the Giants are. I like what they're doing, but they are so hamstrung in what they could possibly do because of the Dave Gettleman stench that was left behind. And
they have no money. They have no money to spend.
That's what I'm saying because of Dave Gettleman. So I like what they've done. I mean, they've had to restructure some contracts. They've had to get rid of some guys too. Caden Smith, their tight end, one of their tight ends was pretty good. Their backup running back, Devontae Booker, was probably one of their better players last year, and because of the money situation, they couldn't keep him.
Right, and
that's what stinks. I mean, they're going to have a bunch of nobodies, and that's part of the problem because of Dave Gettleman and what they have to do now.
Right, and I wouldn't say the Jets are much better. I mean, I think they're getting better. I like some of the signings they made. They re-signed their wide receiver. I forgot his name off the top of my head.
Barrios? Yeah,
Barrios, who I think is a young stud. I think he's going to be.
I agree, and I like that they brought in Uzama, the tight end from the Bengals.
So
I like what the Jets are doing.
I think they're going in the right direction, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, but as some of my Jet fans have said, they want to hit the home run. I don't think that you should be hitting the home run. I think you have to build this up slowly. The Jets have tried hitting the home run, and they've swung and missed.
I'm not the biggest fan of Zach Wilson either, because, again, He can't move his feet out of the pocket. He can't move. He doesn't know how to throw the ball away. I mean, that's what scares me a little bit. But
I think, though, that with another year of experience, I mean, you would like to see him take the next step next year. I mean, I do like the direction that they're going in. I think they're trying to do this slowly but surely, and I think it could work out because they've done this before. They've sometimes tried the home run. They did it under the Rex Ryan regime when they tried bringing in like guys like Plaxico Burress, and it just they tried making Mark Sanchez into a quarterback that he wasn't. So,
well, the one thing I'll say about Mark Sanchez is Rex Ryan got him to 2 back-to-back AFC title games.
Yes, I agree with that, but then they changed the team around him, though. And
Agreed.
And you know what? Sometimes you can't make your quarterback into something that he's not.
No, that's true. Well, we've seen that with a lot of quarterbacks.
Exactly, yeah.
Look what's happening in Pittsburgh now with Mitchell Trubisky. They're going to try to bring him in. And everyone thinks he's going to be the next Big Ben.
Let's not go that far.
No. I'm joking. I'm saying I know it's not going to happen. But the fans, after having Big Ben for all these years, oh my God, we got a new quarterback. He's going to be the next Big Ben. We're going to win. No, you're not. Calm down.
You know what, though? He's a better option than what they had as their other options. Mason Rudolph, just Dwayne Haskins,
Duck Hodges,
yeah. I mean, let's be honest, and I don't mean to be cruel. After that tie against the Lions, Mason Rudolph should never step on the field again.
I agree. I'm with you on that one. You should not. By the way, if they had won that game, there would have been no situation with the Raiders if they had tied and playoff scenario. They would have been in.
Yeah.
You can't. First of all, I don't even consider that a tie. I consider that a loss to the Lions, to be quite honest.
Yeah, but we'll find out what happens in the next stage of the roulette. We'll see the next stage of free agency. I mean, this offseason, it's only late March, and every day with the NFL, it creates something to talk about for a couple of hours. It's that exciting. So like I said, the NFL has become what baseball used to be. You could talk baseball 24/7, 365. Now football has become a 24/7, 365 sport. I mean, we're talking about the combine. Then you have all this free agency. Next month's the draft, and then I think in May is the schedule release. So it's fun times, and trying to get us to the summer when hockey and basketball finish. And I promise you, folks, we will in the coming weeks get to the basketball and the hockey. There's just been so much happening. We could go 3 hours and get to the trade deadline in the NHL and then the NBA, which is now got 10 games left, and that's exciting. I mean, not if you're a Knicks fan, of course, like me, but still exciting nevertheless. As I find out that Julius Randle's not playing tonight and had another scuffle this past week. Yep, just another year in the 21st century where the Knicks just lay a dud. And
well, wait a minute. I'm a Net fan. It's not going that great either. Let's not.
You know what? I have to pick my poison, and I'd rather pick my poison with the Knicks. What's going on with them?
Well, wow, we did good on time this week. But I know you want to talk about one more thing as well.
Yeah, let's wrap up with the March Madness because it is March, and how do you not forget about the NCAA tournament? And this opening week, boy, I tell you, Nick. I mean, we did our preview show on Thursday, and I have to say I had the right idea because I had 6 double-digit upsets in the opening round, and you know what? There were double-digit upsets in the opening round, just not the ones that I picked, of course. But
hello, St. Peter's.
St. Peter's, maybe the one of the best stories of the tournament so far. A very small school, local school for New York, New Jersey area, and then not only to beat Kentucky the way they did, but then to beat Murray State.
That was unreal. I've been watching a lot of the games now. That was unreal.
Especially against Kentucky. Kentucky, who I thought, and a lot of people thought, were actually a Final Four team. People were saying, I was thinking they were actually better than Baylor in that region. I thought that they could have gotten out of there easily.
Bizarre. Didn't they lose also?
Baylor lost to North Carolina on Saturday.
Right. So
you and I were talking. We were actually watching the game and talking at this while it was happening, almost doing like a live play-by-play.
Yes. For most people who don't understand this in our business, don't do this on the radio. You will get in trouble. Just warning.
Yes, absolutely. But
they were up at Central. It was crazy.
Yeah. So. So St. Peter's is a great story, and now they're there. I think another great story is, and I don't want to say great story, but story to watch is Duke, because I actually thought they were going to be vulnerable against Michigan State because Duke is such a polarizing team to me because I think they could be in the Final Four, and I also thought they could be out early. And you know what? You have to give Coach K's team a lot of credit for coming back and beating Michigan State and putting a run on towards the end and giving Coach K one last shot here at another title.
Yes. Now, will he get there? Will he get to the top of the mountain? I'm not sure. They almost lost their last game.
Yes. And it's crazy because Duke, to me, actually could match up against Gonzaga, and I think they could beat him again. That's what's crazy. Even though Gonzaga, remember, had to rally a couple of times. Arizona almost lost to TCU, so that was crazy. I mean, there's just been so much. I mean, Richmond beating Iowa in the first round. How about Iowa State now advancing on? They beat Wisconsin, so they're there. It's madness. But you got to love it.
That's why they call it March Madness.
I mean, I loved being off this past week and being able to watch 12 and a half hours of college basketball on Friday, it was Friday when at 10:45 Eastern, you've got Wisconsin playing Colgate. One of my brothers went to Colgate, so it was actually pretty cool to watch Colgate even give Wisconsin a tough time as well. But that's the great thing about this tournament is being single elimination. These teams don't really play each other during the year, so it does create different sorts of matchups. So it's definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think we might see one more upset here, there, everywhere. I mean, if St. Peter's keeps going at this rate, can you imagine the story for March Madness if they made it to the Final Four?
I mean, that would be so cool, but they have to get past a Purdue team that's so big in size. Now, Purdue, I haven't been a big fan of this year because they've had moments. I mean, they lost to Rutgers earlier in the year, but I just don't see St. Peter's being able to get past Purdue in their size. I mean, they've got such a big guy in center. Their backup center is also pretty big. So if they're going to win, they're going to have to win on the outside shot. And it certainly is a possibility because let's be honest, I mean, there really is no pressure on them right now. I mean, they're playing with house money going into the Sweet 16.
It reminds me of what was it, Loyola, Chicago,
Chicago, yeah.
And it also reminds me of Davidson back in the day with Steph Curry.
Yep.
That these teams were like Cinderella stories, and I think both teams, if I remember correctly, were out right before the Final Four, right?
Yes.
So who knows? I mean, St. Peter's is one of those teams, younger teams. I think also I read a statistic or a stat that they had nobody projected for the NBA draft either.
Yes.
So that was even a cooler story that they didn't have projected NBA players and they're winning.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Nick, when you look at the Sweet 16 here, I mean, there's some great matchups. I mean, I see Texas Tech and Duke. Tech was one of the teams that they put up 97 against Montana State, and then they struggled against Notre Dame. Notre Dame gave them a good run, but they closed down on a 10-1 run late. So now they play Duke, and Gonzaga and Arkansas is the other matchup. And I tell you, Arkansas, like I said, I don't really know about Arkansas. Gonzaga, to me, even though they've had some moments of struggle in this tournament, I still think is the best team left. Some people want to say Arizona, but even Arizona, struggled against TCU.
Right.
So I think if you look at it real quick to see who's going to get to the Elite Eight, I'm going to take Gonzaga, and I'm going to take. Boy, I tell you, I think Tech can make it interesting against Duke, but I think the Blue Devils are going to pull it off, and then that creates a matchup problem for Gonzaga because I think Duke's actually a team that can match up well against Gonzaga.
So just based off the timing, so I know by next show, where are we going to be in the tournament? But when you come back for episode 3,
when we come back for episode 3, we will be at the Final Four because you got Sweet 16 Thursday and Friday. And I don't mean to complain and sound like a little child in saying this. I mean, can we start these games any later on Thursday?
I agree with you.
You have 2 games starting at 7. And you have 7:30, and then you have the other 2 games close to 10 o'clock. I mean, that's been the one problem I have with college sports. The 2 big college sports, their national championship games are both on a Monday night and late.
They're audience killers.
They are. Now, I get college football is, really big in the South and, in the West and stuff. It's not really a Northeastern kind of, sport. Because, when I lived up on Long Island, Nick, I could tell you, I mean, we didn't really talk a lot of college football at all up there. But I was always a Notre Dame fan because they would always be on national TV. And then you come down here, I mean, that's all we talk about. I mean, it's a lot of fun. But, I mean,
starting games at 10:30 or as you said 10:45 this past week. Like,
well, you have 16 games though in the first 2 days on that opening Thursday and Friday. You're going to have late starting times because some of the games go late.
So, no, I get it, but it's just like you said, it's hard to watch.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. But I'm going to take Gonzaga and I'm going to take Duke to advance on. I think one team that's making a run here, Nick, and we were watching the game, and I think there's somebody that's really getting hot at the right time. And you usually don't see this in college basketball. A team that gets hot late and makes a deep run is North Carolina, and they play UCLA. And look, they beat Baylor. They should have won more convincingly than they did, but nevertheless, I mean, they got past Baylor, and they're playing red hot right now. I mean, they scored 95 against Marquette. They scored 93 against Baylor. They play UCLA. They're playing really, really well right now. So I would not be surprised if you see North Carolina get into the Elite Eight. And the other, we talked about St. Peter's. I just don't like the matchup against Purdue, against the big size that they have. If St. Peter's is going to win this game, they're going to have to win it from the outside.
Hey, that's how they've been winning, right? They're putting up points.
Yep. And then on the other side of things, Arizona and Houston, we mentioned about Arizona. Houston getting past Illinois, again, which I didn't find to be surprising because if you were watching the opening round, and I was while I was out Friday night, Chattanooga should have beat Illinois. They were the better team in the opening round for about 98% of that game. And then Illinois played well down the stretch, got lucky in a couple of spots, just barely to squeeze on. But then Houston got past them. Arizona, to me, still one of the best teams in the nation. So I think they advance. And I think Villanova will end Michigan's run. Look, as an 11th seed, look, we didn't even think they were going to get in. A lot of the experts didn't even have them getting into the tournament. And now they've taken this run and made it to the Sweet 16 against Villanova. And let's be fair. Let's give credit to Juwan Howard. I know we've been bashing him a lot this year because of the incident against Wisconsin. But I don't know. Did you see that nice gesture that he did at the end of the game against Tennessee? Yeah.
I mean, I think he's got a heart somewhere behind that black hole that's in his chest. But I think they have a chance.
Yeah, I just can't go against Jay Wright and Villanova. They're going for their third title in 10 years. I know they don't produce a lot of NBA talent, but but he definitely gets the best out of the college athletes. So I'm going to take Villanova to advance on, and then the Midwest Sweet 16. You've got Kansas, Providence. So Providence got past South Dakota State, and they got past Richmond, ending that run. I mean, that was not even a competitive matchup. Kansas struggled with Creighton. Was a close one, but I do think Kansas is going to advance on. And then this is one of the more intriguing matchups too. 11th seed Iowa State against 10th seed Miami of Florida. Also very interesting because Iowa State, which was one of my upsets that I did get right in the first round, was them against LSU, and they got past them 59-54. And then they get past Wisconsin, which was really a home game for Wisconsin. They got past them 54-49. So they take on a Miami team that's already taken out Auburn and Jacksonville State. That's one that is going to be tough to predict, but might be one of the most intriguing matchups of this upcoming Sweet 16.
Yeah, I mean, the tournament's been great. There's a lot of energy. We're seeing fans all over again now after a couple of years of not having it. And just an interesting statistic I found as well. Turner and CBS, they double sold on their ads this year for revenue's sake. The tournament is needed. The tournament is something, even though I might not be the biggest fan, I still watch the games. I still like to know what's going on in the tournament. You can't deny that, one, it has a huge gambling aspect to it.
Of course.
Well. Huge gambling aspect.
Yeah.
That's why you said earlier, and people do it. They stay up for 12 to 15 hours and they just watch games.
Well, it also helps when I was off from work this past week and I could watch it. But no, absolutely, you're absolutely right. And also because this really does feel like the first, normal tournament in 3 years. Because obviously 2 years ago, right around now, was just the beginning of the pandemic and everything was being shut down, including the tournament. And then last year, you had it in one state. you didn't have it all spread out like you do right now. So this
There's a bubble.
yeah, you had no bubble. This is normal. And that's what's great. What's great about it. You have upsets. You have great teams still in it. You have great storylines. I mean, how cool would it be, if Coach K can make it to a Final Four and a championship, and possibly Duke would have to go up against North Carolina again.
That would be unreal. The rivalry, I think it's one of the best rivalries of all time.
I agree, and I think you can make a case the way that the matchups that Duke can face and how favorable it is, and the way that North Carolina is playing right now, that it's not out of the realm of possibility. I still think Gonzaga is the best team, and I still think they're going to win. But Gonzaga and Duke's beat them earlier this year, and I think they match up well against them. And remember, Gonzaga struggled against Memphis. I mean, that was a very close one too. So it definitely creates a possibility. You could see so many different angles in this. I mean, you could see the top teams in it. You could see upsets make it pretty far.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how the rest of this tournament goes, and I guess we'll have to wait and see. But what was your official Final Four though? Since that's when you're going to be back.
Well, I never really officially made one, but I mean, I will tell you right now, of the teams that are left right now, I'm still going to take Gonzaga. I'm telling you, I'm going to ride with the team that's been playing great. I'm taking North Carolina out of the East because the way they are, they've got multiple guys that can score on their team. I mean, they struggled after that flagrant 2 foul, but they've got guys that can score 30 points a game. They're playing extremely well. So I'm going to take North Carolina out of the East. Arizona, I know a lot of people like Arizona, but if it's Arizona-Villanova, Villanova always finds a way, but I'm going to go with Arizona, and I'm going to take Kansas. I'm going to be kind of boring, but I do think that North Carolina is going to get there. So that's going to be my upset team to make it into the Final Four.
Okay. I mean, you're up there at the top, but that's where the end of the tournament usually goes. The teams usually climb to the top.
I think at the end of the day, Nick, usually the best teams make it into the Final Four. I think it's very, very rare and very, very difficult because even if you start playing, you have the upset teams, the good teams find a way to, they'll scout you better. They match up better. That's why I think St. Peter's is going to have a tough time against Purdue because I just think against their size, it's going to be very, very difficult.
The only thing, and you just said it, the only thing I'd really want to see is St. Peter's. I think that would be amazing TV if they were in the Final Four.
That would create such a ratings boost. I mean, look, I think the tournament's going to do great regardless, but say you had a Duke and a St. Peter's in the Final Four. I mean, you'd be talking about one of the best, if not the best rated tournaments of all time. It's not that crazy to think that.
Talk about the storylines. If Duke with Krzyzewski in his last game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, David versus Goliath at that point. I mean, such a great thing with St. Peter's, but then you also have, the legendary Duke with Coach K in his final year trying to make it to a championship.
All right. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, look, it's going to be fun regardless. I mean, the next 4 days, Thursday to Sunday. I mean, you know what, the adrenaline of it. You'll be up all night watching it. It'll be a lot of fun to watch, and yeah, we'll definitely get into the Final Four because we'll have our Final Four team set by next Tuesday. But Nick, that just about puts a nice little wrap on the show. Another fun week of football and baseball free agency. So that starts to wind down. We get closer to opening day. The NHL, which had a crazy trade deadline, and the NBA starting to wrap up. And then before you know it, April hits, and then you've even got the Masters. One quick golf note: Phil Mickelson not going to be in the Masters. That came down yesterday, so that's something to watch as the Masters comes up in April. But folks, that does put a wrap on episode number 2 of Game On for us. So Nick, thanks again for joining me again today, and we will see you on Beyond the Bench and Empty the Bench later on in the week. Also make sure, folks, you keep it to the Empty the Bench podcast network because we've got so many other shows besides that. We've got Keeping It Real. We've got you're gonna have to help me out with this, Nick.
Living life.
Yep.
Here now the news. Yeah.
Now the news with Jerry Barmash. Yeah, absolutely. And this network's only growing. We've got more shows, so I'm gonna have to start writing these down just so I can remember to mention them throughout. But the Hearst Show as well. In fact, go check out the the most recent episode of the Hearst Show because he had former Major League umpire Dale Scott on the show. So that's definitely worth watching. And of course, folks, we are presented by Knack. Just remember to when you go to checkout, use that code GAME, and you'll get a free TSA lock with your purchase. So make sure you do that. These are great bags. I mean, they feel great. You can put a lot of stuff in them. I mean, I just took all my stuff out. That's why it's empty. But that's why you have that. So Nick, thanks again. Folks, keep it locked in here to the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at GameOnETB, also on Facebook, on Instagram at GameOn_ETB, and also ETB Network for all your Empty the Bench podcast news and notes. And also subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit that bell. Ring that bell.
Ring that bell.
Ring that bell. That's right. So you know what's coming up. And I will see you throughout the week with more Monty moments. And I will talk to you again for episode number 3 of Game On next week.
See you next week, everybody.